There we go. Call the regular meeting of the board of the Midway ISD to order for July already. Appreciate everybody being here this evening. We've got everyone here but Mr. Tullis. I don't know if he's running late. I've not heard from him that he wouldn't be here. We'll see if he joins us. Warm welcome to everybody that's here in person or that's visiting with us online. Cell phones, y'all know what to do with them. Don't embarrass yourself. I do that often enough. Remember, the board is here to set goals, listen to reports from the superintendent and other staff members, approve budgets, set tax rates, approve contracts, approve personnel recommendations, and make policies for the district. The board does not make management decisions. Management's the responsibility of the superintendent and his staff. So, with that said, one of the things that we do is we like to start our meetings with recognizing what the district mission statement is. And to that regard, Midway ISD will maximize individual potential within a learner-centered and supportive environment to prepare students to excel in a global society. In that regard, I would also say one of the things that we're going to spend, I don't know what, Dr. Odejima, probably 2-3 minutes going over the STAAR results tonight. Something like that. Okay, yeah. So we'll be that mission statement. We're going to be focused on part of that just for a short time tonight. Yeah. So that said, in all seriousness, one of the other things that I think that we do that is great is a moment of silence. So. One of the sad things that we've got that you might choose to think about during the moment of silence is Midway lost one of our own, Brian Porter's wife, Stacy, and we'd ask for each of y'all to keep the Porter family in your prayers. And that said, a moment of silence. Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. We usually have students do this. Tonight we're going to have, what's this guy's title?
Well, right this very second.
That's why I asked.
Is Safety and Security Coordinator.
And we're going to have this coordinator, Foley, lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we're going to fix that so that he's not coordinator anymore. Superintendent's going to administer the oath of the office. Let me just say, on behalf of the board, we appreciate all of the other folks from the different law enforcement agencies that are here tonight to support soon-to-be Chief, no longer Coordinator Foley.
All right, Jeff, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you'd raise your right hand, please, and then repeat after me. And I'm going to do this. And I know when they do it for the board, I get confused. So I'm going to do it in nice, slow chunks, okay? In the name and by the authority of the state of Texas, I, fill in your name, do solemnly swear.
I, Jeffrey Foley, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of the Midway ISD Board of Trustees of the state of Texas.
Chief of Police.
Chief of Police.
Why'd you do that again?
Let's try that again. Okay, I, fill in your name, do solemnly swear
I, Jeffrey Foley, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of the Midway ISD Chief of Police
that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of the Midway ISD Chief of Police
of the Midway Independent School District in the state of Texas,
of the Midway Independent School District in the state of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
and the laws of the United States and of this state. So help me God.
and the laws of the United States and this state, so help me God.
There you go. Jeff, introduce some of the folks that are here tonight. You don't have to, most of these people are here for you, so.
Okay, so we'll start at the back. We've got one of my really good friends from high school actually called me to try and go to dinner tonight, and he ended up joining us. Next thing we have the retired chief of police from Robinson Police Department, Rusty Smith. And then up until about 2 days ago, my chief of police, John McGrath from UPD, and his wife Julie. And then in front of them, we have Chief Khalil Halby from Midway, Assistant Chief Todd Gill, and Captain Nolan Schaefer, all from Midway. They all came up. And Assistant Chief Ethan from QPD also. The front rows, you have my brother-in-law, my sister, my mother, my wife Julie, my stepmother, my father, my son Ethan, my son Isaac, my daughter Lorelai, and my nieces and nephews.
Man, you did that good.
Congratulations, Chief. We appreciate you taking this on. It's an important step for the district, as you know.
Thanks, sir.
All right.
I think the turnout you had tonight is reflective of the pride in which we have and what we're going forward with tonight, and how proud we are of you.
And also the community support we have from all the other cities
Yes.
in our district. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
I mean, supporting Jeff.
In that regard, one of the things that a lot of folks don't get to see, Ms. Vick and I get to see, is safety and security meetings, committee meetings are required for school districts now, and the number of folks from the local law enforcement agencies that attend our meetings, it's impressive, those individuals, the number of them that are there, all the agencies they represent, and what they bring to those meetings, and we appreciate that. So, information items. We've got a lot of those tonight, folks. Some that are normally presentation items, the investment report and the finance report. Does any board member want to ask questions about or have any discussion on any of the information items? Hearing none.
I'm not a board member, but.
Fair enough.
Okay.
You can make a comment.
So most of this is information, it's all information. However, I would draw your attention to GKD local, which we're showing you tonight. We'll bring that back in a month for approval, but wanted you to just draw your attention to that because it will be an approval item at some point in the not so distant future.
Which item is that, please?
That would be 6G, GKD local.
Oh, I see it, okay. Yes, thank you.
Could you address also the police department regulations manual? Is that something that we're going to approve, or is that more of an
No, sir.
administrative regulation?
We have a policy that you will see as part of update 123, CKE, CKE, and it basically points back to this manual. And this manual, it's TCOL regs that I think it's maybe the third time we've shown you.
Yeah.
But the first time was one version, and then the TCOL changed them a little bit, and so then we showed you the updated version. And this is what we're calling the final version, for lack of a better term. And one of the things that we did to really make sure that we were using our terminology properly is when we use the word policy, that means something very, very specific in our world. So we want to make it very, very clear the difference between policy and regulations. Right. This police department regulations manual, you should think of in the same way as you do the rest of the regulations that we have for the district, except for that these are basically produced by and in alignment with expectations from TCOL.
From TCOL, okay.
Yes, sir.
Very good.
Anybody else on the information? Okay, good questions, good discussion. Presentation discussion items, the proverbial STAAR, recognizing this is only our preliminary report.
While Becky's coming up, let me just say this briefly. We're going to talk about this again in August. The state has not released accountability data. This is just a high-level look at some of the information that we've been able to get our hands on to this point. It is also worth noting, and Dr. Adjournment may remind you as we go, but the scores from 2023 are still being litigated.
Yeah.
And that colors this a little bit. And so there are things that we can talk about, and then there are things that are still very much in the air. And so that kind of shapes this a little bit. So.
All right. Well, good evening. We're excited to talk about our scores and our path forward tonight. The slides that you'll see tonight discuss our preliminary results that are basically the individual student results. Like Dr. Allen said, we'll see campus-wide results next month when TEA releases those school accountability ratings. We'll also identify our areas of need and then our focus, and then also talk a little bit about the redesign of some of the teaching and learning department to meet those needs that we've identified. So to kick it off with results, we'll look at disaggregated data by the performance level. So again, remember that the performance levels start with did not meet, and then approaches, meets, and masters. Meets, they are on grade level standard. Masters is above, they're in the top portion of that area. Approaches means that they're near the grade level standards enough to say they passed, but not really where we want to be eventually. We want them definitely at meets eventually. And then you're also going to see it broken down by state, region, and district, and we have 4 years of that data. So here's the first slide, just to give you some context and let you get accustomed to what you'll see. You've got 4 years of state, 4 years of region, and then 4 years of Midway on the far right. We're looking at 4 years instead of 3 years, which is what we typically do, because we had that redesign just before last year. So this is 2 years before the redesign test, and then 2 years of the redesign test. The other thing that would be a good reminder is that if you want to look at a grade level score and see what an A average would be, the areas for masters, which is the far right kind of aqua colored line, should be around 30%. The red bar, which is meets, would be at 60%. And then the tall blue bar would be at about 90%. So if we had 30, 60, 90, that would be an A-ish. So to keep that in mind as we look through the context here. So starting out with third grade reading, from previous scores, we didn't perform as well as we had before. We slipped a little bit on masters and just a bit on the overall passing rate. It's close, but not exactly where we want to be. So that's third grade. In fourth grade reading, we improved in the overall number of students that passed the assessment, that were approaches on the assessment. The meets looks great. We lost a little bit of ground on masters, but overall pretty good. When we look at fifth grade, we lost a little ground there in all of those areas. Again, though, with fifth grade, we lost a little ground, but we're still really close to that 30, 60, 90, and it really kind of makes up for it, except for the approaches. We want more students to pass the minimum level. We gained in sixth grade reading, so that's excellent. We're not where we were before the redesign of the test, so we're still aiming back for that 90 area, but we made progress from last year. We dropped a bit in seventh grade reading, so that's something we'll look to continue to work on. 39% masters with just a little bit under. 39% is good for masters, but one we want to continue to grow because we know we can do better. We've seen it before a couple years previous. In eighth grade, we had some outstanding scores. We're 90% overall passing. We had 71% meets and then 47% masters. So that's great. We gained 10 points in masters this year. So that's excellent work. And we know we can do even more. So we'll keep working at that, but a great comeback from last year's scores. As far as English 1, they performed relatively well, really close to what they did the prior year, made some gains in masters, so that's excellent. That's what we want to see. This is English 2. They lost a little bit in masters, but about the same number in both approaches and meets, so they're holding steady there, and we'll keep working on those master scores. As far as the math assessment goes, we lost a little ground in third grade math, so that's going to be a target area for us. In fourth grade math, we did well. More kids passed than before, more kids masters than before, so that's excellent growth. In fifth grade, we lost some ground there, so we'll keep working on the masters area as well as that overall passing number. We know we can do better, and so that will be a targeted area. In sixth grade math, same kind of thing. Our trend line is not what we like to see, and so we'll continue to look at the curriculum and the instruction in those particular classrooms for our students. In seventh grade, we also had a downward trend in the overall passing rate. The master's rate's pretty close to where it was before, so we've got some work to do here. In eighth grade math, we saw a dip. The state saw a dip, so it may be the difference in the test a little bit, but it's something we want to continue to work on. It was a dip for us that we want to target. It's the only category in the 60 categories that are scored approaches, meets, masters for all the content, all the grades. There are 60 areas and 59 we outperform the state by easily in most categories. there was one category here in the masters for 8th grade math that we didn't meet the state standard. For Algebra 1, they had a great year, 94% passing. That's excellent. Their meets were also up from the previous year, and their masters at 53%, so that's awesome. So great job this year for the Algebra 1 teachers. This includes both the 8th grade Algebra 1 teachers as well as the freshman Algebra 1 teachers, so great showing there. Very proud of those scores. Moving on to science. In 5th grade science, we lost a little ground. This is an area for growth for us that we'll target. 5th grade science, the last time it was at 84, we had intermediate schools. So we've had, transition times and pattern changes, and that's still something that we're working on in order to get those scores back where we know they can be. For 8th grade science, masters stayed steady. Meets is about the same area, and we're very close on the approaches as well. We do want to continue to improve those scores, but overall it was about what we did last year. In biology, we saw some gains in the overall number of students passing, so that's excellent. Remember that they have to pass all of those EOCs for graduation purposes, so we want to get every student to a level of success on these exams, so that's excellent to see that number. We're going to work on masters because we're holding steady or doing well in the other areas, but our masters slipped a bit this year, so we'll keep working with those honors biology students to make sure they're scoring in those areas of masters. As far as social studies goes, fewer tests in this area. We improved from the previous year, so that's excellent that we've seen gains. It's not where we want to be, but we have seen some growth in this area. So growth in the overall number of students who passed the exam, and as well as growth in the master's area, but we can do better, and that's a target area for us next year. In U.S. history, we dropped from 99 to 98. So still excellent returns on that. So great job of our U.S. history teachers. And again, high school students have to pass these courses. And so 50% masters is awesome. We know 57 is possible. So we're still aiming for those top targets, but that's still considered a success. So these are a lot of things to look at, one after the other. If you want to look at them in context and look at them just Midway measured to Midway. So we outperform the state in most categories, but we do look to see how we perform versus what our Midway standards are. And so comparing last year's scores, which was the same test, so this is the redesigned test, last year's scores compared to this year's scores, this is the change between two of those exams. So that you see there are areas of strength. So we got 4th grade math, 4th grade reading that did relatively well overall. 6th grade reading did much better. 8th grade, the arrow should be a little bit farther down. The formatting's off a little bit. 8th grade reading was excellent. That 10 points up in masters is huge. Science did okay. Like the masters was where it was, and we're within a point or two of where we've been before. 8th grade social studies was much improved over what it was previously. Algebra 1, great gains there. English 1 had more masters than before. English 2 did well and held their ground. And then, U.S. history, they're considered a success, even though they're a little bit in the red because we went from a 99 to a 98. So that's still great success. So overall, that's what it looks like as far as the scores go. We're about half and half. About half of those areas we made gains, and then half of those areas we know we need more instructional assistance and some other things to help those students achieve. These are just for you to look at later. We won't go through each of them, but it's the trend so that you can see we may have gone down, but it may be that the state also went down, and so it's a good comparison to see because maybe the test was a little more challenging than it might have been in years past. But it's the change in Midway to Midway and the change in the state to the state score. So
If you were to look, Becky, at Midway to state, kind of from a top-down perspective, would you say that the state seeing the same kind of patterns and dips that we're seeing?
they are. If you see two red blocks together here, then that means, yes, that's one of those areas where it is. So you see entire grade levels that the whole row across is red, and that's those areas where we kind of follow the same trends. There are some areas, though, that it's not that way. Like we dropped 5 points. Third grade math, for example, we dropped 5 points, and the state gained 7. We should not have dropped 5 points.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's just all over the place.
It is. And the other thing that's a little tricky is that when we look at it as a whole grade level, it could be that we have some pockets of really high performers in those grade levels, and then some other pockets where we don't have high performers. And so we know, like we would never go and make a plan just based on these numbers. We would look at individual schools and individual teachers and individual classes to make a plan moving forward. But yeah, you can see trends though, overall trends.
Relative to that, Becky, when you talk about pockets, one of the things that crossed my mind, and I don't know, particularly since they've changed the test, but like, because we've got, a number of grades right in a row, third, fourth, fifth, da-da-da-da, reading and math. Is there any ability to look like at the prior third grade year and then see what that cohort does the fourth grade year? And is
Right.
there,
Longitudinal data.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
what I was gonna ask.
our screeners track that longitudinal data, and we can also do it with these state assessments to look and see if there are just lower performing cohorts of students. Yeah, absolutely. And we can provide that if you'd like to see it. All right. So response and priorities for our department moving forward. Since I took this office the last year, we've essentially done a needs assessment throughout the year and begun looking to identify priorities. Where are the areas that we need to focus? And we did this by looking at district goals, looking at student performance, looking at student needs assessments based on things that campuses were writing, looking at teacher performance, looking at all of our screeners and benchmarks, talking to administrators, getting feedback from teachers and all of our focus groups, and have come across some themes that seem to continue to pop up in all of those areas. The first is, like, there's some fundamental academic instruction in pockets. Some places it's fantastic, and some places we still need more resources, more support. So streamlining that process is going to be essential. There's also been a need, since COVID, you've heard groups talk about this, but still a need for explicit behavior instruction. So our student has changed over time. Some of it is the behavior piece. Some of it is the classroom management piece. We've also changed a lot of educators since COVID. In fact, I believe we're going to onboard 160 new faces to Midway this year. So we've seen some need for explicit behavior instruction for students, but also some classroom management instruction for teachers so that they have a streamlined process there. We've also seen a dip in student motivation and student engagement, and it's something that all of our campuses talk about. We see it in some of our test scores. You've also seen the rise and the language about social-emotional wellness, and I think that goes hand in hand with the student motivation and engagement. And then also teacher motivation, and then the need for teacher coaching has also been a theme that's emerged. And so when we look at those needs, we turn around and examine what are our current resources, what are our structures, what are the ways that we can support people in these areas, what do we have, and then what do we need. So moving all of these things together and looking at these themes, we've identified 3 big rocks for us. We know that academics is a priority. We know that the behavioral expectations, just the culture of the classroom, is a priority. And we know that character trait and leadership needs to be a priority. So we can talk about goal setting, we can talk about engagement, and we can talk about responsibilities and those character traits along with our students. So to put it in context, when you're in the C&I world, this is how we address a problem. And we've been doing it this way since about the 1940s. So in the C&I world, Ralph Tyler, godfather of curriculum instruction, says that when you have something that you're going to teach, the first thing you do is you identify the objective. What is it that we want kids to learn? You've got to identify that to begin with. So start with the end in mind, set the goal. What do we want them to do? Here it is. And then you identify what experiences do we need to line out so that they can learn this information. So what pedagogy do we use? What strategies do we use? How are they going to learn this? How are we going to set this up? And then we organize those experiences in a way that kids can participate. So maybe we do some recall in the beginning so they remember something that they know already, and then we connect that to new learning. And in the end, we start asking questions to check and see if they understand what's going on and can make those connections themselves. And then in the end, after we've delivered all of that information, we evaluate. We want to know, and we have to find out, how do we know that students actually learned the objective that was taught? And because we're Midway, we don't stop there. We don't just start the cycle over like we taught it, you should have learned it. If you didn't, we're moving on anyway. We can't operate like that because all students should have the opportunity to be successful in Midway ISD. So the next questions that come are, what do we do when they don't learn it? So we taught it, we went through the process. What happens next? There's actually two what happens next. The first one is like, what do we do when they don't learn it? But the other piece of that is, what if they already knew it before we taught it? We've got to have a plan for that student as well. And so moving forward, we know that there's another response, and the way we've moved toward this is to use this multi-tiered systems of support pyramid. So this is very common in the education world, and we talk about intervention, we talk about response for students in tiers of support. The first one is your universal tier. That's what is going to be taught, your core curriculum, your core instruction, that's going to be taught to every student in every classroom in every school, like in 3rd grade. This is the curriculum. So we teach it, we use these strategies, everybody gets it. But statistically, we know that only about 85 or 95 or 90% of those students are going to pick it up the way we teach it the first time we teach it. So we have to have a response. We also have to know, like, who didn't get it, who's got it, and who doesn't have it. So when we do a screener, or an assessment, we find out who got it and can move on to the next step, and then who needs more intervention. Well, the next level of intervention is in that tier 2, and in that area, we focus on small group instruction. So we pull the kids into, like if you've been in the elementary classrooms, they pull them back to the kidney table, the horseshoe table in the back, and they do rotations, and everybody does something on their level. And then they work to fill in the gaps. Like, what is it that we need to go back over or introduce you to or fill in some kind of gaps because maybe you don't remember what steps we did last year, and then now we've got to remind you, and then you'll pick it up and you get it. So that's small group instruction. And that works for another 10, 15% of the kids. But there is, from time to time, this 5% of students who need more intervention and more individualized instruction so that they can actually learn and move on and accomplish the objective that we've set for them to accomplish. So the neat thing is we've done this really well in Midway in the world of academics for a very long time. Where we had not considered this multi-tiered layer of support was in the behavioral aspects or in the character trait, the social emotional learning side of things. So we began looking at the things we do. We know, all of our teachers know, that in Tier 1 for academics, you teach the TEKS. You use the curriculum that's designed to be taught. We have different curriculum for all the subjects. The district sets that aside. We vet that with teachers. We train on that. Everybody knows what to do. All the 3rd grade curriculum is the same. And we assess to know whether or not kids get that. Like, we know how to do that. It's routine. It's every day. We also know that when there are some kids that don't get that, we have embedded time within our instructional spaces and in our classroom, we pull the kids aside that don't get it and we do small group instruction. Or in elementary schools, they have a WIN time, which is what I need time. And it's a time set aside. It's called what I need. So they call it WIN time. And that is essentially like a leveled intervention time where kids get what they need within the school day to intervene in areas where they're not being successful. We all know how to do that in the Midway system. That's also what happens when they pull you back and they have small groups within the classroom. Or in high school, teachers have tutorial classes after school. Or in our middle schools, we have advisory periods and we have intervention classes if that's necessary. And then in Tier 3, we know it comes to usually a specialist, an instructional interventionist, an instructional specialist, possibly a classroom that's a full 45 minutes of intervention when you're in a secondary setting, so that you move into that area to make sure that you have what you need academically in order to be successful. We do this and we do it well. We hadn't thought about it in behavior. So in behavior, last year, we realized this is not happening. None of us do exactly the same thing when it comes to classroom practices. And behavior continues to be one of those things that people bring up as it's a theme of things that like maybe are prohibiting from us doing as well in academics because we can't focus as long on particular topics, or there's some other issues that we have to address so that we can't get to the full components of the lesson. So we know it goes hand in hand. You can't teach academics only in a classroom today. So you have to have these management systems. So we brought in Safe and Civil Schools to do training last summer, and all of our teachers, all of our administrators participated in that, and we've seen some gains. So they implemented this STOIC rubric, which is basically just this prioritized your structures, the way you're going to teach explicitly all the rules, the way you're going to observe students, the way you're going to interact with them, and then the way you're going to correct them so that like all that happens fluently, and it's something that you've thought about ahead of time. You've considered it before something happens in the classroom. You've already thought it through. So you've got a response planned out, and we respond better that way. And so it helps educate our teachers and our administrators on what to do. So tier 1 instruction. So we're going to do it in every classroom, and we did. So we're in year 2 of that implementation. And then we expect that that will go well again. We're training all of our new staff on that. We're doing refresher courses for our staff that are coming back. Campuses have adopted these things, not just in classrooms, but also in the cafeteria and in the hallways. Kids know what to do now. So it's helping us with some of that, the cultural, environmental setting and the behavior expectations there. What we still need some work on are intervening by teachers in the classroom. So let's say I've done what I said were the expectations in the class, but I've got an issue that keeps popping up. Someone is still like easily off task and distracted or disruptive in some way. Like some of our teachers don't have a toolkit deep enough that they've got something they can go to correct that. If it were academic intervention, they'd know what to tell you right now. But for behavior intervention, they may only have 1 or 2 things that they know how to do. And then they need more explicit instruction and assistance in coming up with additional strategies because it may not work for every kid every time. So we've got to give them more information there. And so tier 2 is going to be a focus area for us. The other piece is tier 3. So we have behavior specialists and some interventionists on some campuses, but not all. And what we've learned is some of those specialists have very different programs, very different processes, very different strategies. We think we can take the best of all those strategies and share it with everyone so that we can support these tier 3 interventions for individual students who just need more time and need more explicit instruction and possibly work one-on-one with a person to help them get back into a place where they're performing well in the classroom, both academically and in this behavioral context. So we've got more work to do there, and we're working on that and thinking through that this year. We also hadn't applied this to the character traits or the leadership piece, and we know we need that. We know we need the goal-setting components. We know we need to address motivation. We know we need to address just overall abilities to get along with one another in the classroom. And so we've been using the character strong curriculum that teaches character traits for several years. This took off and was excellent and still is excellent in our elementary schools. In fact, if you have an elementary student, you've probably seen emails, parent squares come through that talk about the character trait of the month, and the kids can tell you all about it, and they have pull-out sessions that talk about this. It didn't take off as well in the secondary classrooms. So what we've looked at is a district-wide curriculum called Leader in Me that basically teaches the Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People on a level that a first grader would understand it, or a third grader would understand it, or there's secondary student modules. So it helps us help students focus on being proactive and setting goals and beginning with the end in mind and working with other people and just leading themselves. So set a goal and then find ways to get to that goal. Let other people help you and then monitor yourself. So we know that today, based on what our students need, we've got to have a process to explicitly teach those skills as well. So we're working on that. This year we'll implement Leader in Me through our morning meetings, through our advisory times, through our announcements at all of our schools, classroom by classroom, in every classroom in the district. Moving into Tier 2, we do have some systems already where counselors provide specialized lessons for small groups of students, so we'll continue to look at that and work with that. Also, Leader in Me has opportunities to empower students as well. And so it may be that some of the student groups that are working in this can help bring along other individuals, their peer groups as well. So we have lots of opportunity to grow in that area. And then in Tier 3, we have services set aside. Anne-Marie Zellers and the Student Support Services is the umbrella where our mentoring is housed. It's where our social workers are housed. It's where we can connect kids and families to communities and schools if they need outside resources. So lots of opportunities there, and it fits well into this structure. So all that to say, we're looking for systematic approach. It needs to be systemic. Like everyone needs to know all of the parts and what is happening, because we're not just looking at 3 areas, 3 big buckets. We're looking at 3 big buckets with 3 tiers of intervention and education for students at 8 elementary campuses and 3 secondary campuses. So it gets exponentially larger as you think about it, and a systematic approach is the only way we're going to be able to tackle all the things we need to in order to make students successful. So we have a team. We have an army of people. These are the directors in the teaching and learning department. You know their faces, and they've presented here from time to time. But in addition to our directors, we also have teams of people that are working with them. The fun thing is, in the last 12 months, we've had lots of redesign and change. And just so that you know who that is and why it's new, we wanted to look at this org chart for just a minute to talk about who's in these roles and how long they've been serving in these places. The first is Kim Johnston. She's our director of curriculum. You may remember in the past, Kim was our elementary director and Lori Sapp was our secondary director. So we've combined those positions, and Kim is the director of all of our curriculum, both elementary and secondary. We've added a coordinator of MTSS. You can imagine all of the tracking and training and follow through that it's going to require in order to pull off this systematic approach in order for us to see success for all students in all of these areas. So Robin Wilson, Dr. Robin Wilson, is going to be our coordinator for MTSS this year. We have a title change for Jess Wheeler. So Jess was previously the director of College and Career Readiness, and now he's going to serve as the Executive Director of Federal Programs. He's going to continue to do all of the Director of College and Career Readiness roles and responsibilities, as well as our federal programs. Our campuses are growing. 6 of our 8 elementaries will be Title I schools. 1 of our middle schools is a Title I school. We also have a growing ESL department that's also title funded. And then we support private nonprofit schools through that title program. So there are many things that are balanced, and right now they're spread among like 5 people. So we're going to centralize a lot of those resources and compliance pieces, as well as the coaching of individuals that have to work in those areas with Mr. Wheeler. So we're excited that he's going to take on that role for us. We also have a new behavior coordinator in special education. It's actually just a reorganized position. It wasn't called this before. This is Joe Kunkel. He's worked with us in special education for a long time now as a behavioral person, and he's going to continue to do that with a little more supervisory roles. He's going to be able to work with special ed and gen ed students, so that's exciting that we can talk with teachers of all students. We've added a 504 coordinator position. We just repurposed another FTE. So our 504 population continues to grow, and Lisa Cochran needed some more oversight in that area. So this has been an opportunity we've had to bring a new coordinator in. That is Ashley Crane. So she's joining our district. Her husband is also joining our district as a football coach. We also have, I missed a circle here, our director of professional learning is only in her 2nd year, so that's Sarah Collins. And her position was also reorganized, repurposed, because that was previously the director of innovation and learning, and now it's professional learning, and encompasses a whole lot more than instructional technology. And she's going to work with all of our learning coaches that go in and work side by side with our teachers. We have a new elementary ELAR coordinator in the curriculum department. You may remember that we had some late resignations at the beginning of the year last year, and so we never filled that position. So we now have that position filled. So that's awesome, because we're not working a man down anymore in the elementary world. So that's awesome. And then that will be Ashley Brewster. And then Tiffany Brummett is our elementary math coordinator. She's only in her 2nd year this year. So that's also, she's learning things as she goes. She's great. She's working with our GT groups as well. And then we have a new secondary ELAR coordinator. Her name is Crystal Lewis, and she comes to us from Waco, and we're super excited to have her here. So we're almost finished. Okay, so we also have a coordinator of academic advising, which is Kim Booth. That is also a repurposed position. Kim came in and began working with us when we split to 2 middle schools and saw more and more needs for equal programming and master schedules and all of the things we needed to do in order to set up both middle schools to move into high school and be prepared what they need to do in high school. So she's working with all 3 secondary schools and master scheduling. So essentially, she starts on master schedule in January to get us ready for August. So that is nearly a full-time job, or it is a full-time job because she's doing all 3 campuses. And then she's working with our counselors as well, in addition to Anne-Marie working with those counselors. We also have a new district testing coordinator because Lori Sapp also did that role. So that is now Audrey Carney. Audrey Carney vacated the campus testing coordinator at the high school, so there's also a new campus testing coordinator as well. And then we have the coordinator of PEIMS and student data, that's Tammy Smith. She is starting her 2nd year in the PEIMS department, which is a major data upload. Like Tammy works in reports and submits all of our things to the state. So she's doing an excellent job, but she's had a learning year this year. So she's done an excellent job and continues to grow in that role. And then she vacated that PEIMS manager spot. So we have Jamie Glinsky in that position as well. So we've had lots of change, but they're great people. So we're excited about the work that all these folks are going to do together this year. That's the list of them. So you can read that later. So, when we think about those 3 big rocks, not everybody's going to touch every one, but pieces of these departments are going to impact those areas. And so if you're talking about academics, we know that special ed is going to drive a lot of that conversation. When we talk about accommodations, we know the coordinator of MTSS is going to impact that because we're going to be looking at assessments and interventions and moving through that. Kim Booth, working on academic advising, is going to make sure the people are in the right place and that all of the core sequences happen like they're supposed to. Jess Wheeler is going to work through the federal programs and also the college career readiness. Our testing coordinator is helping us with all those evaluations. The curriculum department, we couldn't do it without, so that's important. And then the professional learning group is going to bring on the training, and then also the learning coaches are going in classrooms and working with people side by side. When we talk about the behavior expectations, again, the MTSS coordinator that's going to be a priority in that role this year. So Dr. Wilson is already on that, working on handbooks and strategies and things. We've got our special ed specialists really coming in to support that, those behavior folks that have expertise in those areas are going to follow up with us. Tammy helps us every day in coding things in PEIMS regarding those behavior components and the discipline components. And then professional learning, again, we're going in classrooms with teachers and talking about classroom expectations and what's that look like. And then finally, this character trait leadership component. We have 22 district trainers. No, that's not true. 12 district trainers for Leader and Me. So a lot of the people you see on this screen are trainers of that program, but MTSS coordinator, along with Anne-Marie Zellers and those student support services, are working hand in hand with counselors to provide those tiers of service and intervention to students. And then again, our professional learning department and the learning coaches are going in and working with teachers in the classroom on those specific issues. As far as like the particular ongoing and then new initiatives, we've prioritized some things. A lot of it has to do with our Tier 1 curriculum. Something that we haven't talked about yet that I think is important as far as that Tier 1 goes is that we've started a partnership with Edify, which is, it's not a statistician, it's like actually a psychometrician group. So they study how people measure learning. So he's coming in to look at our current assessments and also writing some assessments for us. Edify has partnerships with the state of California, TEA, lots of other giant school districts, but also he had a relationship with Marble Falls, which is how we met him. But like super excited, he's going to come in and talk to our teachers at our Back to School Summit about what tests actually look to measure. It's not actually just the content, it's thinking. And that's something that we haven't always considered. So that's part of our approach this year, is just to arm teachers with everything they need in order to ask great questions and like push the rigor. We're also looking at a 5% increase in masters this year. So we want our kids thinking and working at higher cognitive levels. And so we're going to work through that as we work through these other pieces. The items listed across the bottom are also just ongoing things that we're looking to do to try to streamline some of our processes and then make it easier for teachers and administrators to do the work they need to on campuses while we help them collect data and look for our next steps. So this is us in a nutshell. We've got these 3 big buckets, and then we've got tiered intervention within that so that we're addressing the needs of every single student. We have an excellent team of people set up to do this, and we're excited about what we're going to accomplish this year. We'll talk more about scores next month. And we certainly have our work cut out for us, but I think we have the right group of people and the right path forward. So can I answer any questions?
Questions from the board?
How's the leader and me going with the staff? And
Yeah, I was gonna ask about
follow up from our training.
So we've done one training so far. We had coaches come in that are going to be doing essentially football, volleyball, cross-country two-a-days at that time. And they've had the training. There was a great response from that. And then the rest of our trainings will happen on August 2nd and 5th. So our trainers are getting ready, and we're excited to roll it out to staff. So I look to have more to report later, but we're excited about it.
Well, circling back to where it started, and to give credit where it's due, a shout out to Sarah Collins for putting that professional development day together. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about who was there and what that looked like and how it started, and because that training starts with our administrators and
Yeah,
our
absolutely.
central office team.
That was absolutely grassroots effort. People have played with the idea of Leader in Me for a long time in Midway, and we've had some schools try to copy it, but it was a very expensive program, and we weren't able to purchase it completely before, so we had to do what we can, buy the books, do book studies, and try to incorporate. And there was a grant that came along, and some principals were interested, so many of the district staff and the principals went to get more information, and then I applied for the grant, and we got $450,000 of a $700,000 3-year curriculum and implementation, and we have trained throughout the summer 12 trainers that are going to be able to train our entire district on the 7 Habits curriculum. Sarah and I have been working with Stephanie Gao, our district trainer, for the last several months. Sarah set up all of that training day for our administrators, and that was the training that the board was invited to, so some of you guys were able to come out and participate in that. So it's an investment in adult leadership first, which is what we're really excited about. We know our kids need motivation, but I think the adults in our current environment also need the opportunity to think about their priorities and keeping first things first and being proactive and thinking about why they're here. So writing a personal mission statement and then sticking to it. So we're excited about what's going to happen.
Personal mission statement slides.
Yeah, we need to get those
Is
rolling.
that coming?
Some of us still have to finish ours, so.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I wanted to thank you and everybody that
Absolutely.
helped put that together. It was a really incredible, productive,
Absolutely.
impactful day.
And Sarah's leading the charge with the rest of the district trainers, so they're all meeting and talking and planning to get ready for our staff. So we're excited about what that's going to look like in August.
I'm glad you're doing it. I'm glad we're doing it. I'm honored that we were included as part of it. I think that's the way to go, and I just can't applaud that piece of this enough.
We're excited about it.
Lots of other great things too, but I was excited about that.
And
Awesome.
I was doing something in the house and had the Today Show on, and they were interviewing one of the Olympic swimmers. I couldn't tell you who it was, but all of a sudden I heard her say, "Every day I choose to go work out and to work hard to do this." And I thought, oh my gosh, yeah,
That's a leader in me,
It's not a
Stephen
have to.
Covey thing, yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
I thought about that.
Yeah, we're hoping to leaderize our language in every area of the teaching and learning department on our campuses, so we're excited about that.
If you're not familiar with it, look up, is it Stephen Covey, Leader in Me? It's great stuff.
Absolutely.
Other questions from the board?
Hey, so I'll throw one out in the
Sure.
spirit of,
Oh, is this Dump Becky
Oh,
moment?
good. It's my favorite part of the
no,
time.
it's
Yeah.
not, it's not.
Are you going to choose to stump back?
I choose not, no. And I know that, the first third or so of this was all data and numbers and crunching and STAAR and whatever else. And as much as we hate that, that, I think as a thing, but I know it's important that, whatever it is we measure what's important, and
Right.
that's how we know if we're succeeding. So my question is, as we look at this MTSS sort of implementing that across
Right.
behavior and then across the character development, do we know yet, what are some metrics we're looking for how do we know what does success look like, right?
Yes.
Is it, because it's really hard to quantify that maybe. So
It is.
talk about sort of how we know
Sure,
2-3 years from
absolutely.
now if we've been successful.
So on the fourth bullet down here, last year we began writing classroom walkthrough scripts that matched what we were looking for in academics, and then another walkthrough we were looking for for that classroom management piece, like the STOIC breakdown, do you have the structures? Do you explicitly teach what you're supposed to do? Are you observing students on a regular time schedule? Are you, moving through the class and correcting where you need to see those things? So we went through classrooms looking for those. So we have a classroom management, behavior management walkthrough. We also have that character. Before it was a character strong look for. So you're looking for the language and you're looking for the actions in the classroom. So we'll add the leader in me language to that walkthrough as well. But some of that comes from us as administrators and support staff in the district going into classrooms and looking for those things. So that's definitely one of the ways that we're going to measure it. There are many things when you start moving into those additional tiers. There are many things that we can do to start measuring individual student performance. So it really comes down a lot of the time to observation, like how many minutes on task was it before something else happened, or was there an antecedent to that behavior? And so you're looking to see what are the ways that we've noticed things, and then what are the ways that we've intervened, and then what did we see after that? So it's very much that put a strategy in place, follow the strategy, track the data, and then measure whether it had a good or negative impact, and then either continue with it and keep tracking to see if there's long-term success, or you try a new intervention. So some of it is that. We also have Leader in Me has a survey that we sent out to parents, we sent out to staff, we sent out to students to measure like school climate things and then their own leadership information. So we'll use that as a piece of data. We did baseline, so we did it before we ever implemented the program, and then we'll do it again in this next May to see, have we seen changes in what parents think and what students think and what teachers think and what opportunities kids have. So there's a way to do that on the behavior side of it. And then like with the cultural piece, even the TASB survey that was sent out to teachers recently, we can send that out. It's primarily teachers. So we collect data on basically the culture of the school in that way. So those are things that we're looking to track. We also have these teacher focus groups. We have the math committee, we have SHAC committee, we have different ways that we can ask teachers if they see a change, and then we'll use that as feedback too. So more of it is anecdotal. It's not an ABCD fill in the bubble on a test kind of thing, but we do have ways to collect data. It requires us to be present and be there observing and tracking information and then asking questions.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I think I'm a huge fan, after seeing the Leader in Me stuff, a huge fan of seeing where that goes for our staff and also for our kids. And I think that's great. I'm glad you're
Absolutely
already looking at what does it look like down
We've
the road.
got the hard data on pieces like that with the culture and the responsibility piece, like do your referrals go down?
And that was not a Stump Becky question,
Right,
so I knew
no.
you had the answer to it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
It was a great 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I only gave her 1 to 2. That was only 2 minutes.
All right, well, I think that time is
One
up.
other quick question for
Okay.
you, I say quick. What do we as a board need to know about budgetary constraints to really be able to fully work this focus, not just this coming school year, but down the line? And I don't expect an answer, but that's something I want to be sensitive to, because in the bigger picture,
Right.
about what we do as a district and what our focus is on, there are lots and lots of important things. I mean, safety's up there at the top of that list, but at the end of the day, we all know that there are lots of people that pay lots of attention to these STAAR scores and those
There is.
things, and particularly for Midway. So that's one of the concerns I have, is y'all having enough money to be able to do what needs to be done here.
Yeah.
And so, as we move forward, and I don't know, this guy might have something to say about that tonight.
Well, briefly, and what I will say is one of the things I'm very proud of with regard to our executive team, Becky mentioned earlier that this is a $700,000 curriculum that we're getting basically for 50% off.
More than that.
And
yeah.
more than that, that's right. And when she talked about the reorg of the teaching and learning department, she kept saying these are positions we've repurposed. What we've tried to be very intentional about is what are we doing that's not working that we should stop, so that we can try and fund things that we think will work. And so I'm not going to tell you that we're budget neutral, but for all of the initiatives that we're putting in place, we're really close to it. And so we are also very mindful of the money, great initiatives die when they're not funded.
Right.
Right.
And so we've also been trying, like, every one of us knows that this has to be sustainable. Otherwise, you're just throwing butter in a pan. It's going to melt right away, and you're not going to have anything to show for it at the end of it. So it is part of the, we talk about it constantly about we want to do it. As a matter of fact, we had a number of principals talking to us about Leader and Me. I don't remember exactly when this was. Cappy may remember because you were one of them. But like in one of our first conversations was, we'd love to do it. How are we going to afford it? And that's kind of how we found the grant. It was a combination of us digging around and it being brought to us by the Leader and Me people who knew that we kind of were interested in this. And so it is because we're able to find a path to sustainability that we finally moved forward with it. So I love that question because it's one that we are going to have to grapple with, but it's already front of mind for us.
Very good.
Awesome.
Anybody else? Thank you, Becky.
Thank you.
Video management system and vape detection. Mr. Garn.
Well, it's hard to follow Dr. Odajima. Well done, as usual. Mine's not budget neutral. Sorry. So thank you guys for the opportunity to present to you tonight. I'm excited about this topic because it is cutting edge technology, and it is something I think will contribute to safer schools and improve safety and security. And I think a safe school is one that our students will learn more in and contribute to the overall goal. Tonight I plan to cover a recommendation for a next-gen video management system and highlight how we can build on that system to manage vape sensors and other kinds of safety sensors. And I plan to answer your questions from last month and any other questions that might arise. Let's cover some alphabet soup first. What is a VMS? It's a centralized system that records and stores video footage from all your cameras for later review. When an incident occurs in the district, it's often the primary interface used by our campus safety specialists to investigate. It also provides the framework or the scaffolding to integrate other security solutions such as access control, vape sensors, license plate recognition. It's kind of an infrastructure level system. Currently, we have around 1,000 camera sensors, and they record video based on motion detection. It's a very traditional VMS in that any intelligence as to what's going on comes from your end user. To find footage, an end user would pick a camera, scroll through the footage, and then find an event. It has limited support for iPads and MacBooks. It's a common complaint I receive. And any new features that are coming to our system are only limited to their proprietary cameras, which we do not have. In short, it works, but it is not kept pace with competing systems whatsoever. The price has been right, though. It is a $0 recurring cost every year. In contrast, what is a next-gen system? Well, a next-gen VMS system, in addition to recording video footage, it can detect and record distinguishing attributes of objects that are in the frame, such as it knows that there's a human or a car, or the color of clothing, or the color of a vehicle in the frame. It takes that data and it stores it alongside the video in the database. The platform we've chosen is called XProtect by Milestone. It works well with both Mac and PC devices. It's designed to work well on mobile devices. So administrators can receive and act on those alerts right from their mobile phones. Another really cool thing about Milestone is it supports around 13,000 different devices. So it's an open platform. So in addition to cameras and vape sensors, license plate recognition if we decided in the future. Imagine the possibilities if you had a license plate you were watching, and as soon as that license plate hits the parking lot, you get an alert on your mobile phone. You can meet them at the door. Gunshot recognition, lots of things can be built on this system at a later date should we choose. The ways this can contribute to school safety is by allowing quicker insights as to, it turns this into actual actionable data instead of just video. It helps with quicker decision making. Think of it as like a search engine for recorded video. It enables queries like, show me all the white vehicles in a parking lot across all your cameras at one time. Or show me all people with a blue shirt in this area at this time or with a ball cap. It allows for a shift from a reactive approach to a situation to a proactive one with those smart alerts on your mobile device. Let's move to air quality sensors, or vape detectors as they're commonly called. We'll talk about, is this an issue for Midway, and can they effectively deter vaping? An air quality sensor, it's a small electronic device. It's packed with various sensors inside it. They can detect the presence of particles in the air like CO2, THC. We've tested several brands. The one that stood out to us is the Halo 3C. This unit also has tamper detection, motion detection, and it can detect and alert on keywords and gunshots. The VMS then sends notifications to your smart device and via text message, email, and it provides for a rapid response during an event. The Halo 3C comes with a 5-year manufacturer warranty out of the box. Halo actually will also extend that to 10 years if you choose to buy the 10-year licensing from the start. I don't usually advise buying 10 years of any kind of technology from the start, but they do stand behind their product. So one of my first questions when we looked at this is vaping even an issue for us? There's a national youth survey that was sent to all middle and high school students last year. 1 in 10 secondary students self-reported current tobacco use. I turned to Dr. Otajima and Dr. Wilson for numbers on vape-related DAP referrals for the last 2 years to see if there's any trends. Those numbers showed an increase of 58% at the high school. That was from 63 to 100, and an increase of 121% at the middle schools. That was from 14 to 31. These numbers included both the THC vape and the nicotine vape combined. We began a live demo of the Halo 3C sensor back in January and ran that through May 30th of this last school year. We placed one Halo device in each of the 2 high school 300-odd restrooms. It was one that was picked for us. This graph here represents the number of vape detections that were over this course of the demo. You can see in January we logged about 150 detections. That number dropped each month and was approaching 0 by the end of May. Officer Caldwell from the high school, I discussed this with him, and I wanted to know what percentage of the vape alerts that he investigated actually led to the recovery of a vape device from the student. He said that number is around 98%. In fact, he felt like the ones that he didn't, they probably ditched it. He felt very confident in this device. And you might say, well, in May, they just did it somewhere else. Yeah, probably so. But the presence of this sensor in this space obviously deterred vaping in this space. And imagine what you could do if you had them everywhere. So Dr. Allen tasked us with providing you all with some concrete numbers for a milestone in Halo implementation. Plan A is to include vape sensors in all restrooms and locker rooms in the high school and both middle schools. We discussed the idea of just a few sensors in hotspot locations on a campus with the idea of moving them around to keep everybody on their toes. This would create quite a burden on your sensor mover people. The alerts are tied to a location, so you know exactly where to go. So each time you moved it, you'd have to rename it, and then you'd have to reconfigure it, and you'd have to relink it to the adjacent camera. So it would create quite a burden. Plus, the kids are always faster than us anyway. Plan A also includes the addition of some AI-enabled cameras in key locations to track ingress and egress traffic. This plan would also include moving all existing cameras to milestones, so at all the campuses, so instantly improving our VMS for the elementary schools and providing one central VMS for our safety teams. Here's a breakdown of the cost associated with Plan A. To bring all cameras at all campuses into milestone VMS, add vape detection to all secondary campuses is around $395,000. This covers 3 years. In year 4, to continue receiving updates and support, which you could choose not to, it's not wise, it would be about $25,000 each for both Halo and the milestone. Plan B, a scaled down version of this, it would allow us to move all the cameras to milestone, but only add vape detection at the high school. High school had the highest occurrence of vaping, and we could always decide to add middle school campuses later. The cost for Plan B is just over $330,000. Plan C focuses only on upgrading the VMS, but for all the campuses. If this were approved, we could begin implementation on this immediately. We would leverage all of our existing cameras, and we could be operational in Milestone before the new school year starts. Total cost for Plan C is around $167,000. I believe a switch from our current VMS to Milestone could immediately improve our response to incidents, help us become more proactive and less reactive. Based on our studies, the Halo vape sensors absolutely were effective in deterring vaping. But it's worth mentioning that electronic vape sensor is just a small piece of this puzzle. In addition to detection devices, we're working on the education and awareness pieces for the students and their families. So just, I mean, honestly, the tech piece is probably the smaller piece of this. So that's the end of my presentation. Thanks for your time and attention. I'm open to any questions that you might have for me.
So the $74,000 for that, that's a one-time, right? Is that correct for the VMS license, the remaining campuses? But then after year 4, you pay $25,000 each on those
Yeah.
other.
So that bottom line 74, that's the price to bring all the elementary existing cameras into that VMS system.
Okay.
And then on year 4, and that's for 3 years, year 4 for the entire district would be $25,000. And that's to give you updates and access to support.
So if we delayed putting in the vape detection at the middle schools, they would actually roll into their year 4 a little later.
Yeah, you could add that at any time.
Is there any kind of downside to waiting? Is it, do we save money by doing the whole thing up front? Behaviorally, is it better to do it all at once?
I mean, we presented that as an option to be a little more conservative financially. Benefit of doing it all at once. I think there's a huge benefit of doing an entire campus at a time. It's very intrusive to go in there and run. The network drops all the locations. And I think there's some merit to having complete coverage of a campus for consistency. I think if later you wanted to pull in a campus, you could do just Midway Middle, just River Valley Middle, or you could do them both.
Okay.
What's the proposed funding source for any of these plans, Jesse?
At the moment, unexpended bond funds, beg, borrow, steal.
How much unexpended bond funds do we have, Dr. Allen?
Well, if we went with the $395,000 option, that would we'd be done for all practical purposes. We'd have a little bit left here and there, but that would exhaust what's left of our unexpended bond funds
Okay.
for all practical purposes.
Is there anything to be said for, going forward and saying we'll do a high school implementation, really to get a year under our belt, sort of to test, to figure out, hey, we should have run the lines here, we should have done that. I mean, is there a reason to phase it in from a learning perspective, rather than jumping into all at once? I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Like an expanded proof of concept
Yeah,
even.
does that make sense? Maybe.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it would give you some more data. It'd give you another stopping point as to whether or not I want to move it to the other campuses.
Sure.
That's about
but
to me, that's about the only difference,
That's a good question.
is that.
I would say my confidence level is fairly high.
Obviously,
in the
yeah.
sensors. They're pretty straightforward.
Does any of this include athletic facilities, stadium, other sort of shared spaces that are not, restrooms near baseball and softball, other things like that?
Inside the main envelope of the high school, it includes every
So
shared.
it would include arena there, but not necessarily Panther Stadium.
You got it.
Okay.
It includes Horizons.
It does include Horizons. Yeah.
Other questions from the board? We have this on the consent agenda for Plan B, as y'all have probably seen. But as y'all well know, we can pull it off the consent agenda and do something besides Plan B if that's what the board wants to do.
I was going to say, kind of to your point, Mr. Witt, we feel we owe it to the board to come with a recommendation. Even when we're a little torn, we're kind of 50-50. And we kind of landed on Plan B. the logic being two pieces to it. One, no matter how much confidence we have, the VMS is
It's a no-brainer.
I hate using that terminology. I'm not worried about it at all. The vape detection technology, we have a ton of confidence in, and we've tested it, but there's always the you don't know what you don't know factor.
Right.
And so to us, trying to be conservative with district resources while also trying to tackle probably one of the biggest challenges that I've seen in public schools in my 28 years,
Yeah.
because vapes are so easy to hide. We felt like tackling the high school, when you look at the numbers, I mean, even though there's a 121% jump at the middle, it's still only 31 incidences, both middle schools combined, compared to the 100 at the high school. To us, that kind of seemed like the kind of reasonable starting point. There's not an economy of scale benefit
Right.
by jumping all in at one time. It is no secret that we continue to grow. I think that anybody who pays attention to district business knows that the next bond program is sooner rather than later. And so we could get something installed, we could run with it for a little while. There may be some things we would learn. And then if it's going well and committed to it, we could build the additional phases, middle school, and then potentially some elementary work as part of those additional phases moving forward. And that's kind of the logic that drove the recommendation that you see in the consent agenda.
Can I ask a clarifying question too? Because when I was asking about stadium and other facilities, I'm assuming that we were talking about vape there. We do have camera coverage in those places, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, just making sure that was.
I was wondering if Chief Foley, having done a lot of vape prevention strategies in the high school, wanted to weigh in, or Allison Smith had anything you wanted to add to the discussion? Am I saying that right? Is that the new title, is Chief Foley?
I can vouch for the system itself, the Halo devices itself. When those trigger, it timestamps the camera and sends you an email with the camera shot of who went in and who came out. And so it's much easier than knowing, oh, we have a smell on this hallway in this bathroom, can go back and check those cameras and spend hours and hours of time checking cameras. So I can say that helps narrow it down. I would say that our results from it are probably 98%, probably spot on, and if they didn't have it, they had it at some point probably. So I mean, I feel like it's what our students deserve to be able to go into a restroom and get to go to the restroom in peace, to not have to worry about, I can't go in that restroom because that's the one that all the kids hit to go vape. Because we want it to be a positive experience for our kids all over the building.
Yeah.
And it can't be that restrooms or locker rooms are where kids go to do things like that because it's out of camera sight.
Mhm.
So that's kind of.
I think that, I like what they are, I like what they do. I do believe that it is a problem of the kids vaping. My two sons that were here today have mentioned to me that they love the gender-neutral restrooms in the CTE wing because they can go in there and use the restroom peacefully without being bothered by somebody vaping. These devices also have noise detection, and if a fight or something is happening inside the bathroom, it can detect on that and will alert to us also.
Oh.
In the past, where we've just had to rely on an odor and start watching videos from there, you could end up with a list of suspects this big. With this, we're narrowing it down to only a few. Therefore, we're not impacting as many students that didn't do anything wrong whatsoever. We can narrow that list down and really expedite the process of figuring out what's going on.
That's a good point, thank you.
And I'll say too, because Jesse and I talked about this before the meeting, that the question about getting that gunshot detection, sound detection on the elementary campuses, to do that through Milestone was going to cost basically the same as doing the vape detection anyway, right? So it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily have a good path forward there yet, but we're sort of waiting to see what plugins come out, right?
While gunshot wasn't the focus of this particular demo, all that to say, I mean, I'm sure it works fine. We didn't place these in places that are advantageous for gunshot.
Right.
And doing a little bit of research on that, they say that the first shot's always by an exterior door. So you'd want to cover a gunshot detector at every exterior door. Elementary schools have 15 to 20 doors.
It's a totally different thing.
You want to cover hallways, so you know they're in an instructional area. I mean, you could be looking at another $500,000
Right,
to do our
right.
elementaries.
Yeah.
But
Kind
milestone,
of speaks to that phased approach.
Crawl, walk, run
Yes.
approach, yeah.
Is this Halo system gonna be public information like all the kids at the first of the year, like, hey, we're
Absolutely.
putting these devices, you know, just as
I
a,
mean, wouldn't it be great if they all knew you had this and you got the
Yeah.
word out and you never had to use it?
yeah.
Right.
So if the board later were to approve this, we could get the VMS up quickly.
Yes, sir.
Before the start of school, right, Jesse?
I believe so.
The Halo sensors, we probably wouldn't be able to have installed Thanksgiving or Christmas.
Yeah.
I would need
We would
access,
take the
yeah, to
fall pushing the information communication plan on this. We've talked to Emily about this a lot, about if this happens, no surprises. Otherwise, we're gonna get overrun in our discipline setting, frankly. And even at that, we might even phase it in, to be candid, just so we can manage it initially. But there'll be no surprises.
Other comments, questions from the board?
Well, as the resident numbers guy with Wesley not being here, just looking at this, I know it's a big number to start with, but if you take the 330,000 for the first 3 years, and then it's 25 each for Milestone and Halo, right? So a combined
Correct.
50,000 for ostensibly the next 7 years for that 10-year period. I mean, it's not chump change, but it's right around $70,000 a year. It's a big number up front, but it's $70,000 a year for 10 years is what it amortizes to. So it's not monstrous dollars, in the grand scheme of things. If you look at it over the coverage period.
It's less than we're paying for some of the other, like our LMS, like Schoology, like that number is very manageable
Right.
compared to reoccurring costs we have on
Yeah.
other platforms.
So being sensitive to cost and budget for us and for the community to know that we're getting this really comprehensive system for not a lot of money on an annual basis, because I think is an important point to make. So,
Jonathan, are you a fan of Plan A then? You think it's worth the extra?
I'm a fan of Plan A, Colin.
I'm kinda thinking
Plan
that
A,
too.
I mean, if you look at it on an annual basis, Plan B comes out to be.
It's not that much
68
different.
68 a year, Plan A is 74.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I ran the numbers, go figure.
I trust you, man. That's why we have an accountant on the board.
In that same regard, but from a different perspective, Jonathan, when I look at this, I also look at, okay, so the 395 Plan A pretty much, as Chris said, exhausts our remaining excess bond money or leftover, whatever you want to characterize it. And not that $65,000 in round numbers is not something, but what else are we really going to spend that money on, right? I mean, but we've got something we could do here, and if we don't do it now, I appreciate what the superintendent said, but in terms of calling a bond election and getting it in front of the voters and what all it's going to encompass and everything, I think that's still several years down the road. So if we don't do this for the middle schools now, as tight as budget things are, and I hold no hope for what the legislature is going to do next year, I don't know where we would find the additional money to fund that if we're not going to do it now, if we then spend that 65 on something else. That's my concern. So I'm a fan of Plan A.
Plus, it'll probably go up in cost. It would probably cost more.
That was my,
Yeah.
to get the other school.
And
Jesse,
what
is
can we
it-
get for 65? I mean, like, so.
No, I mean,
It's probably
it would
best
be,
bang for the buck.
A third of a bus?
I bet Ken could find some things.
I'm not kidding, yeah, he's nodding a lot. What do you think?
Yeah. So, all right.
So, hey-
Anything else on this? Because we got the,
From a timeline perspective, are we, I mean, 87 Halo sensors, high school, 44 at each middle school, or 44 total across the middle schools? It's across both?
Total.
Total, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, running the lines for those alone, to me, I think it's unlikely you're going to get 130, 140 sensors installed in 1 year with the lines alone. I mean, we may give you the money to do it, but I think it's going to take at least a year to do it.
And I need access to the hallways, so I
Yeah.
think this would be a Christmas project.
I mean, to me, I think it's Christmas for the high school, and it's probably next summer for the middle schools, even if we fund it now. I mean, is that reasonable?
We could work over spring break,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, okay, that's fine.
anybody else?
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Shifting gears completely. Education Foundation, Ashley. Annual report.
This is the part where we talk about getting money and not spending it.
Exactly. Or the
Good
people that
evening.
are most important, Pam, get the money, and that's our classroom and campus folks.
Good evening. I am excited to present to you a report from a very successful year for the Midway Education Foundation and my first year leading our annual drive alongside Mr. James Rainey. As part of our memorandum of understanding we have between the Education Foundation and Midway ISD, it is our duty once a year to provide to you a cost analysis of what the district invests in MEF and what MEF gives back to the district. That report can be found in your board packets. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Brad Alford, Jonathan Green, and Dr. Allen for their another year of service on our board. On your screen, you will find our annual report. I'd like to congratulate our board for not only surpassing our goal, but successfully raising more in public contributions than ever before. I challenged myself and our board not only with a monetary goal, but also goals such as cutting donor attrition in half in comparison to 2022, acquiring 50 new donors, and recovering 90% of past donors. I am proud to say that we as a board succeeded in achieving each of these goals in addition to implementing fresh donor stewardship efforts. I am going to point out a few things on this slide. We had over 200 students qualify for academic letter jackets this year. We awarded the most ever at 50 letter jackets, with plans to revamp that letter jacket ceremony and celebrate that this fall. The foundation increased its contribution to $12,200 for the Grow Your Own scholarships. Additionally, this year included a special Dr. Jeannie Johnson Memorial Scholarship made possible by Dr. Johnson's family for an additional $3,000, allowing Midway to fund 4 total scholarships for paraprofessionals. 15 more students qualified for the Spirit of Midway Volunteer Service and Academic Achievement Awards than in 2022. We took grant training online and revamped that training to be 30 minutes in length and identified grant mentors on each campus that could encourage and assist staff with their grant applications. With that said, the foundation was able to award a whopping 80 grants to 121 teachers, totaling over $325,000 in comparison to 63 grants awarded in 2022 for a total of $245,000. The only area we were down was staff drive by $3,000, due mainly to turnover. We have worked hard to revamp staff incentives going into our new staff drive and taken into account staff feedback from our end-of-year survey. In total, the Education Foundation was able to award $324,000 in grants, $16,000 in staff scholarships, $10,000 in staff awards, and $10,000 in academic achievement recognition. With that, on behalf of our Board of Directors, I thank you all for your support. I look forward to working alongside Mrs. Erin DuBois this year in implementing new annual drive strategies, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I love all your pictures, by the way.
They're very fun.
Sounds like you had a great year. Congratulations on your hard work and your team's hard work.
Thank you. It was a collaborative effort.
If I'm not mistaken, within the foundation is support for our staff to help them write these grants. If they've never done a grant proposal, they can get support from your office.
From our office, and we've identified grant mentors on each campus.
Right.
That's been hugely helpful.
So I'm looking at this list and the things they've asked for, the titles, and I said, this is just a really superlative group effort. I get really excited when I see what they've come up with.
It was a really good year for grants. We're definitely on the up and up, which means we need to raise more money so we can keep funding these.
Yeah, it's great to look through the whole list that's after this. I mean, obviously the Tango flight was a large expense, and it's going to be a great program, but just there's a lot of really good stuff on this list.
A lot of really good stuff, a lot more social emotional grants, a lot more professional development. So really encouraging all of that.
So for our donors, a lot of bang for the buck for our donors.
Yes.
And I also think it's important every year to remember that these are all donations from the community and not tax dollars.
Right.
So just make no mistake, this is donations from corporations and individuals, not tax dollars. So
Right.
this is above and beyond the budget. So
see one rather large ticket item on this list here, Dr. Allen.
Yeah, you sure do. And we're excited about that. In fact, they started training, was it last week, Jess, or week before?
Yes, last week. We had nine members of the Arrow community that came in and trained with Mr. Gibson. Had a wonderful week. Mr. Gibson left really amped up and really ready to go. And so there's a partial wing sitting in, it's not affiliated with the bill, but it was a part of the training piece. But there's a current smaller version of the wing in the shop right now that's on display.
That's cool. I mean, that's just the diversity to meet our students' needs and our teachers so they can help meet our students' needs. You got $1,000 grant all over the place and then $100+ $1,000 grant. It's just
Yeah.
Awesome.
Other comments, discussion from the board? Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
All right, consent agenda. We've got our minutes from June regular and special meeting, new course for the high school, our student code of conduct, the extracurricular behavior management plan, board meeting calendar, the surveillance security software hardware that Jesse talked to us about, TE expedited waivers, our policy 123 update, and we're pulling number 10 because we're not ready on that. So, does any board member wish to pull any item from the consent agenda?
I'd like to pull two of them, number 4 and number 7, please.
All right. We'll pull number 4 and number 7. That said, do I have a motion to approve 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6, and 8 and 9 on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Alford,
Second.
second by Ms. Watts. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Number 4, student code of conduct. Colin.
I really just pulled this for a question, and Dr. Allen knows probably what the question's going to be, and it's just a chance for you to say anything you think you'd want to say here in this forum about it, because I know we're all hearing from a lot of parents about cell phone policies and things like that. So where do we stand with the student code of conduct on that? Do we feel good? And then what are we sort of thinking over the next several months we might be looking to do? What do you want to share about that?
Well, we added some language to our student code of conduct that's consistent with what has been in the handbook for quite some period of time, and you can see that in your track changes. It is being discussed. So we had 2 local districts who have recently gone to the Yonder way of dealing with cell phones. La Vega's been doing it that way for a while. Yeah. And I too have been hearing from our community kind of in 2 veins. And one is we should do this, and others don't take my kid's phone. And so I know this will be a divisive issue. In addition to that, I've been paying attention to what's been going on with this topic in other school districts around the state. And there have been a number of different strategies for how to come at this. And so when you're talking about something that could have this level of impact and really just kind of affect the way people act and behave, the best way to try and do that is get as many opinions as you can involved. And so we'll run a process this fall that will draw in educators, parents, administrators, and just ask the question, where are we and where do we want to be and how do we want to try and craft that? And we'd bring examples of what's being done in districts around us as well as districts from across the state, and have them come up with some thoughts, suggestions, and recommendations for how we might move this discussion forward given the desires of our community. It's kind of tricky because I think it's pretty clear that something needs to be done. Mm-hmm. But how far and how fast you go and whether or not you do the same thing at every grade level for every kid is where I think we need to have a discussion about the nuance.
Are we thinking about sending a survey home for parents?
Well, what we do is start the process with this group to figure out how broad we want that survey to be crafted. But at some point,
we
yes.
will do a survey. I think that's important. Because, like you said, I know there'll be people all over the spectrum about cell phones. You know, we had that in the past, and then our community said they wanted their kids to have cell phones, and so we did away with the fee, the fine, and taking cell phones up and all that stuff. So
I think it's important to remember that everything I read is that in terms of academic challenges, not just here, not just in Texas, the entire United States, one of the biggest pieces of that is distractions in the school setting. And certainly there are lots of other things, as Becky talked about, but cell phones, particularly at the secondary level, man, that one is one that creates lots of challenges. So I think you're right. It's a discussion that's got to be had. Obviously, we're not going to just blindly, unilaterally do something, but I think it's an important matter to properly go down the line, gather information, and have the discussion.
Yeah, and it might be interesting too to see how it's changed over time, right? So,
I was thinking that.
yeah, that like when my kids got cell phones, they were fairly new, so to speak, in a way, and we weren't allowed to use them, and they weren't there, and then everybody started getting more cell phones at an earlier age, and so then everybody wanted their kids to have their cell phones in school, and then now you've got the kids coming through that have had cell phones since they were, I don't know, 5, 6. So is that one of the reasons? I mean, could that be one of the reasons it's so much more of a behavioral issue or a distraction in class because they're growing up so much more on their phones?
Well, they're more, I think they're more documented, research is more distractible. It's shortened attention spans, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. But
One of the big shifts, so like I was high school principal when we were dealing with this.
Yeah.
And we did not have Instagram in those days.
Exactly.
That's one of the big shifts. Like in the old days, it was about the phone.
Right, that's what I'm saying, it was so different
The
then.
extent of what you
Yeah.
could do is pretty much text and call. Now it's
Social media.
different.
Right,
Social media is
parents wanted to
different.
go get a hold of their
So-
kids, you know, that's what it was.
Well, and then there's that piece. In the world of school safety and
Right,
parents
but I was
being
just saying
very
how it's
concerned.
changed so much since my
Yeah.
kids were there, and it's a different whole.
So I think it's going to take a lot of thought and discussion to do something that tries to understand all of that.
Well, in the context of this, I appreciate that the language has been set up to match the handbook, so I'm.
Yes, sir.
With that, I would move we approve the student code of conduct.
We have a motion by Mr. Witt. Any further discussion, or I guess we, second? Second by Mr. Alford. Now, any further discussion on this? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Surveillance and security, software and hardware. Colin, I appreciate you pulling it. I would move that the board approve Plan A.
I would second.
I'm good with that. I think the cost might go up, and like Jonathan said, the numbers are.
Sorry, Ken.
I just think it makes sense to go ahead and give Jesse and his group enough runway to start working on this, and if they get, I don't think they're gonna, it'll be a challenge. I don't think they're gonna get it all done before the end of May, but if they do, let them do it, you know? And if they don't, they'll get it done when they get it done. I think we should give them the runway and see where they go.
All right, then.
Is there any grant funding available for stuff like this?
We looked.
That's a great question.
Jesse researched that.
Yeah,
and
we asked
looked.
about that at the meeting last time.
Yeah.
We went through $430,000 with window film and fencing. That was a TEA grant. I did get in touch with a third party who researches grant funding for safety and security. I've got a meeting next week with them. We'll see what comes of that.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion also carries unanimously. Resolution to commit fund balance.
And now, Ken, you're gonna get some money.
Yeah. So,
In the future.
you know, of all the times for Wesley Brooks to not be here. So anyway, yeah, he and I talked about this. And he,
Cindy's not here either.
yeah, that's well. Yeah, she's not. Ask him about that later. He said the board's kind of accustomed to doing this. We take a certain amount of fund balance and set aside to help deal with issues related to tech, buses, maintenance facility needs. When he and I talked about it, what he basically does is he takes that 25% we're committed to, does a little math, and tries to see what the excess is. And then by committing some to fund balance on the front end, it does two things for us. And one, if we need to dip into fund balance in amounts that do not exceed what you see on the screen right now, so $300,000 for facilities and construction, buses at 150 and tech at 100, we can do that without necessarily having to come back to the board for a budget amendment necessarily. We'd still need to get permission to spend the money. It's very important you hear me say that. This is not a blank check. It just means we wouldn't necessarily have to do budget amendment to accomplish that. The other thing it does is it helps us in our ratios because it's not committed fund balance, but it's designated. And so that's the other thing it does for us.
Very good. And you're right. I mean, this is something we've certainly done in the past. The numbers are slightly different than what we've done in the past, but I'm good with them.
Well, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, Ken, but just so you know, the degree to which our folks kind of work on value, I was talking to Ken the other day, and if this has changed, I'm about to look pretty dumb. But we found some buses in a neighboring area that have lots of life to them. Talk a little bit about that. Can you talk about it, Ken? Are we going to out ourselves? Okay.
We're still doing it. Bluefield ISD posted on one of our TASBO forums that they had a whole bunch of buses to get rid of. I think about 26 is where they started. And so we got in touch with them. By the time we got down there, they had 5 left.
Wow.
Because they're selling their 4 to 5 year old buses with about 50,000 miles on them, and they're going for about $55,000 a piece. So you can imagine the districts are snatching them up as quick as they can. So we committed to buying 5 of them with the funds that we have left. So this year we'll get 5 buses instead of 2. I mean, it makes a big difference. We went down, Josh and I went down there last week, looked at them, test drove a couple of them. I mean, they're in phenomenal shape. They're everything we need. We have some like them now on our lot. They're going to do preventative maintenance to them. If they don't have tires that meet certain specs, they're going to put new tires on them, put new brakes on them, change the fluid, so we're essentially getting a new bus.
All that to say that we request these funds so we can use them if we need them, but man, we are always value shopping. And so, and just another pat on the back to Ken and his leadership and the way he thinks about things. But so we're always kind of working on those sort of things.
Can I ask, do you know why Pflugerville was selling their
Declining
buses?
enrollment.
Their
Enrollment's declining.
Oh, really?
Yes, ma'am.
They've had I believe they've taken a big hit for the charter school industry,
Yeah.
and they're losing students
Didn't
left
they
and
down,
right.
they don't have any 6A high schools anymore, right? Aren't their high schools all 5A
They
now?
were so
I
big.
think they were all, I think that's right. I think they're all rezoned to 5A.
I think Weiss was now got
They were
down to
growing so
5A.
fast.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Do we have people to drive the buses?
We do. Good. We do.
Are they selling bus drivers too? That's it's a long commute.
Good thinking.
Yeah. We're actually sitting solid in that area. Correct. So, yes, sir.
All right, do we have a motion to adopt the resolution as presented in the board packet?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Vick,
Second.
second by Mr. Green. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Discuss, consider, and take possible action on endorsing a candidate for the TASB Board of Directors. Who's going to speak to this?
May I speak to this?
Sure.
So the way that TASB is represented by 40 directors on its board representing all of the regions in Texas, and of course TASB serves the 7,000 trustees across Texas. And the way those elections are run are a little unusual. It's not a general election. Candidates really go forward based on endorsements from individual school boards. So the only way a candidate can have the best possible option of moving forward for election is in a motion like this where the school board endorses each candidate. Mildred Watkins out of, is it La Vega? Has been serving in the position for Region 12 for many, many, many years very faithfully. So this is the first time I've seen this position open for this election. And since she stepped down, if you'll see on this handout, originally there were 5 candidates for that spot, more than any other region across the state, and now this down to 4 because I was one of them, and when I saw there were 4 other candidates, I decided my talents and time was better spent. And I would like to come alongside and support this from our neighbor of Lorena ISD. I think most of us know Russ, and we all know his wife, Mandy Johnson, who was the former principal at Castleman Creek. You've got his bio in front of you, and there are a couple of things that are not listed on this because I had spoken with him and kind of talked through my plans and talked to him about his plans. He is the Region 12 representative on the TASB Legislative Advisory Council, or LAC, which is a grassroots organization that helps develop the legislative advocacy priorities that TASB takes to Austin every session. And then he told me he's also getting involved with Raise Your Hand Texas, which is another advocacy organization, and its mission is to educate, engage, and activate Texans through public education, policy, and advocacy. So I feel like I personally want to propose that we endorse Russ for a lot of reasons, but the most noteworthy thing I think he brings to the table is, you all may remember that when he proposed to his wife, it was at Castleman Creek Assembly, dressed as the Midway Panther, when he came in front of all of the kids and showed up as the mascot, and then I think he took his head off and proposed to her, and it went on video and it went viral. So I think he needs to incorporate that in his story. So
My kid was there for that. It was,
Yeah.
she loved it. She loved it.
yeah. So Russ obviously is just very, very passionate about education, about kids. He and his wife have developed this program, #EdPiper, to help newer and seasoned educators discuss timely topics in today's world of education. They have 7 daughters. They're, involved active parents. So that would be my candidate of choice. There are 3 others that are listed here from, Connolly, Colleen, and Goldthwait. I'm sure they are worthy individuals, but Russ would be my pick, and the best shot he has of taking this spot is if he gets endorsements from, I think he's at 40 out of the 70 districts in Region 12. So that's what I know.
Well, I talked to Russ yesterday. Russ is a friend, and I think he would, if that's a motion from you, then I would second it. He's going to be really good, and I don't know how many of you might have been there, but 2 or 3 years ago at TASB, he led a session on campus safety and security. He brought a guy who was Israeli there who knows about security. He had a really good session, and it was one of those that was in a room about half the size of this room, and it was like people out the door wanting to see the session, and I was really impressed with the way he engages with districts and with what boards need to move
Yes.
forward. So I was glad when he ran for the board in Lorena. He and I had some conversations when he was doing that, and so I think, if that's a motion from you, I'm a second.
That would be my motion for me.
Well, then that's a second.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion from Ms. Watts, second by Mr. Witt. Any further discussion? Have we heard from any of these other 3 people?
I included in your weekly update something from the superintendent in Connolly advocating for, Stephen Carter. That was, she just sent me an email basically saying that she would appreciate support for Mr. Connolly. And I included that in the communication. That's the only other one I've heard from.
All right. Anybody else? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Thank you.
Personnel, no reason to go into closed session.
No, sir.
Nothing for us to do on personnel.
No, sir.
It's that time of year when we've delegated it all to superintendent. Superintendent's communications.
I would just tell you that, and there's been a lot said this evening about staff in general, but we have all of our leadership team, and that's a broad net. Principals, assistant principals, directors, our coordinators will be flowing in and out starting tomorrow and the next day for our kind of back to school kickoff leadership trainings and meetings. Tomorrow will be at the ITC. The day after that will be here. Teachers report back on August 1st. New teachers are next Tuesday. And so we are rolling. I'm looking at Cappy. She's smiling. It's like, ready or not, here they come. So school is happening, and we're excited about that. And there's a lot to be excited about in terms of just the work that's been done in preparing the trainings that are being put together. You heard Ms. Watts talk about a lot of work that Sarah has done to get the Leader in Me going. We were doing Reading Academies training today with Johnston, Brewster, and Brummett. Was that the other one in there, Kim?
That's right.
And it's just been busy up here this last week. And it's kind of funny, boy, we hit a little low around July 4th, and then the second we come back, it is like ants on an anthill, and off we go. So it's been really good work, and I'm just excited about the way our administration has been preparing for that and the way our teams are pulling together. So we're getting ready.
How much do we still need to staff, teacher-wise?
We're whittling down. We've got a couple of special education positions at the elementary level that we're looking closely at, a couple of general education teachers at elementary level, and then some paraprofessional positions, mostly in the area of supporting special education classrooms. But we're chipping away every day and thinking creatively for the areas that we're concerned about. So.
Anybody else? All right. We're out of agenda items. Appreciate everybody's being here. We're adjourned.
Brett had before by 9 o'clock in the school. Brett,
No, thank you, sir.
Dr. Allen, what do we need to do with this?
What do you need to do?